Modern software development has changed a lot in the past few years. Previously, we had to type and code everything by hand, so the process of building software was very difficult and very expensive. But now we can utilize agentic coding tools, which makes the process a lot easier and a lot faster. Three of the most prominent agentic coding tools include Claude Code by the company Anthropic, Codex by OpenAI, and the Cursor Integrated Development Environment. In this course, we're going to use Claude Code as our agentic coding tool because I believe that it is the most effective one currently available in the market. Anthropic CEO Dario Amati said at a Council on Foreign Relations event that in 3 to 6 months, AI will be writing 90% of the code. And in 12 months, we may be in a world where AI is writing essentially all the code. Fast forward to the end of that year, a survey that was done at Stack Overflow reported that 84% of developers said that they are using AI tools in their development work. This shows just how quickly the market has changed. So to get a better understanding of what Claude Code is, we can look at the official docs on the Claude Code website, which is at code.claude.com. So the official definition is that Claude Code is an agentic coding tool that reads your codebase, edits files, runs commands, and integrates with your development tools. It's available in your terminal, but it could also be a plugin or extension in your integrated development environment. They also offer the Claude Code desktop app, and you could also use it in a browser. In order to install Claude Code, navigate to their website and scroll down to the Get Started section. Then you can simply copy the different commands to install on your device. If you are on a Mac, you can use Homebrew, which is my preferred way of installing it. I'll provide a link in the description. If you are watching this on StephenCodecraft.com, then this will be included in the minimum viable product workbook, so you can have the link and the commands that you can run. Now, to give you a better analogy of how this has changed software development, I want to give you an analogy of a line cook. So think about a line cook at a restaurant. So their job is execution. They chop the vegetables and the different ingredients. They're in charge of the timing and the plating of the dishes, and they're very skilled in their focus in an assembly line, and they do repetitive tasks. This was quite similar to what a software developer would do. They would specialize, for example, in front-end development or back-end development or DevOps, and they focus on one aspect of the software development process. Now, consider an analogy that if that line cook was now given kitchen robots. So the robots can actually do all the work that a line cook would do. They handle all of the mechanical execution. So suddenly that line cook is no longer working directly and preparing the food. Rather, they can think from the level of a chef. So they can now be creative. They can decide what they want to make, how to combine different ideas, and how to design the menu. Their job now becomes the ability to have a vision and clearly articulate that to those kitchen robots, which will carry out that vision for them. And that's really what coding agents help do for us developers. It can write boilerplate code, it can wire up the different operations for CRUD endpoints, so that's for creating, reading, updating, and deleting resources. And a lot of the part of development is very repetitive, such as creating and validating a form. And that has really been simplified now because of these agentic coding tools. So an important thing to note is that just because we're using agentic coding tools doesn't mean that the fundamentals of programming and knowing how to code is irrelevant. Just as, for example, if you consider an elite chef like Gordon Ramsay, he is no longer in the kitchen preparing the food himself. However, he has years of experience and he has an in-depth understanding and he can cook himself. That's the same perspective to have when it comes to software development. You want to know how to be able to code yourself and understand all the code being generated and have a really strong opinion about it. So as a programmer, you're no longer working from the perspective of being a line cook. Rather, you think of it more as being a head chef. So in this section, we're going to go through a simple sample project, and it will be a web application that is a workout tracker. We're going to create it with Vite and React, just so we get a better understanding of how to utilize Claude Code. Now, later on in this course, we're going to go on and build our own Expo React Native mobile application. However, web development is an easy way for us to get started. We don't have to install many different dependencies. So in order to get started on our sample project, navigate to the website vite.dev. Then you can click on in the navbar for guides. Now we don't really care about the specifics of Vite, and we're not really teaching that. This is just a simple way for us to get started and get a better understanding of how we can utilize Claude Code. So when you scroll down, what we actually care about is the command in order to get started with our project. So we can use npm, yarn, or bun. I'm just going to use npm, keep it simple. So I can copy this, just so I have that command. So now you can open up your terminal or Visual Studio Code or whatever, your cursor, whatever integrated development you prefer. So I'm going to do pwd for print working directory so we can see where I am in the file system. And I can do ls to see I don't have any other projects here. So here I can just say make directory and I'll say sample web, and then I'll change that directory, sample web, and then I will simply paste in this command that we copied earlier. So let's go through and create a sample project using Vite. We'll just say yes. So for our project name, we'll just call it workout log. And for our framework, let's see, scroll down and we'll use React. We're using TypeScript, install with npm, and start now. So while we're waiting for this to install, we can refer to Claude Code. So now when using Claude Code, you want to navigate also to claude.com/pricing. Now when utilizing it, you can get started for free. However, in order to really build a project, you should be on at least the Pro plan, which is $17 a month. It is absolutely worth it because it will improve your productivity as a developer and it will enable you to build complex full stack applications. Now, it is good to get the max plan as well. However, for this course, the Pro plan is more than enough. So once you get started with that, here we see that it is already finished compiling our project. So I'll just copy over this localhost and then we will navigate to our browser just so we can see what it created for us initially for that Vite project that we got started with. Paste it in here and we will navigate to that. So here we see just a really simple web page for this Vite project. So let's navigate back to here. We can close this out. So Control C, and then we'll do code and then period, which will open up Visual Studio Code. Now, if you're unable to do this from the command line, you can still manually open up Visual Studio Code for this particular project. This is just a quick way for us to do that from the terminal. So here we can expand this so we can see. Now, if you go to the extensions, I'll close this and we'll say, yes, I trust this. So here you can scroll down here and let's see different extensions, which will make it easier for you. So I do suggest you install, it's here, the ES7 React Redux and React Native snippets. You can install the Prettier extension, which will help format your code. Scrolling down here, Visual Studio icons. And a useful one is Claude Code for Visual Studio Code. This will enable you to use Visual Studio Code from an extension, which provides a nice user interface if you don't want to do it directly from the terminal. So those are some sample extensions, which will be useful to install. So now when we extend this project, let's look at our package.json, see our dependencies. Okay, so what we can do here now is we can click on this particular icon for Claude Code. Now, if you don't see that, you can still just open up the terminal by going terminal, new terminal, for example. The keyboard shortcut on a MacBook will be Command and J. So you can open that. And so all this does is this opens up a terminal and it runs the command Claude because we've already installed it on our system. So here we see it's asking, do you trust this project? I'll say yes. Now you also may encounter the problem where it doesn't recognize your IDE. So let me make this bigger actually. So do Command plus. Great, so now you can see it better. So do Command and J, so close the side nav. So here I'm currently using Opus as the model, and I can do /IDE, just in case it doesn't integrate with your IDE. So currently I have Visual Studio Code. If you're using Cursor, you can also configure that. So that's a useful command. And so with Claude Code, the way that we utilize this is that we have built-in commands which start with a /. So we'll get more experience with that throughout this project. And you can also just speak to it in plain text. Now, if you just want to talk into it, you can do / and then voice and toggle voice mode. After that, you would have to hold the space bar and then speak to it. Now, I actually don't like the / voice mode. Instead, I like using a tool called Hyperwhisper. So I'm not financially affiliated with them, but I do think that is a really useful project, and I'll be utilizing that throughout this course. So this is at hyperwhisper.com /en. Then you can simply download it. So I won't walk you through this whole process because it is available on this particular website and it's not mandatory for this course. In order to open that and utilize HyperWhisper, you would use Command and then the spacebar in order to bring up that voice recording feature. So now we can clear this out. I'll do Command and K, and I can do / model. So the most capable model is Opus at the time of this particular course. The mid-tier one is Sonnet, and the lowest tier one is Haiku. Now, this likely will change by the time that you're viewing this, but in general, I like to utilize Opus when in planning mode. So I'll show you an example of that soon. And then for actually implementing it, I like using Sonnet. The reason why I do that is I'm currently on the Pro plan, which is the mid-tier plan for Claude Code, and so I have to be cognizant of my usage. You don't want to reach certain limits. So I can close this out with escape. Now you can do / usage. This is a really useful command as it lets you know what your usage limit is for your current session as well as for your current week. This is something that you want to check on to ensure that you don't reach a particular limit. If you do, then it will time you out and you have to wait a certain period of time before it resets. So I can clear this out. Now I want to switch to plan mode, and I can do that with Shift and then Tab. So here it says accept edits on. We'll do it again, and now we're in plan mode. So plan mode is really useful in the case when you want to discuss with Claude a certain feature that you want to implement, and you don't have all of the details figured out yet. This could help fill in the gaps of your details, and Claude Code becomes a thinking partner with you. So it doesn't just execute on your prompt, but also will come up with the exact details of what to execute on. Now, before we do that, we do see that it says update available, run, brew update Claude Code. So I can copy this, and then I can open up bash mode with the exclamation point right here within Claude, and then I'll just paste that in. So we'll run this. So this will upgrade Claude Code, and I can do so without having to exit out of Claude. So we can just close that out with Command and K. So if you want to exit out of Claude Code, you can do / and then exit. And then to start up again, you can use Claude again. Now here it says we could always resume the session by using Claude / or 2 - resume. And then this unique identifier. So once again, we're in plan mode. So I'll show you an example of this. Okay, so now let's actually utilize Claude Code to actually do some development. So another tool, I know I did mention Hypervisor, but there also is another tool called Super Whisper, so I'll be utilizing that one as well. So I can start that up. And so I'll give a command here and let's say scaffold a workout logger app, so it should let users log exercises with a name, sets, reps, and weight, and seed it with a few entries. Utilize Tailwind and ShadCN for the styling. So here I'm utilizing voice input to help me save time. So I'll say enter. Actually, before doing that, let's create a plan. So I can cancel it with Control C and do an up arrow. And then to put it in plan mode, you would do Shift and then Tab. So now this will create a plan of how to best implement it. So note that when you do set it in plan mode, it will take time in order to come up with that. Great, so we can expand this and scroll up to see what the plan was. So now if we review it, here it says scaffold a workout logger app inside the existing project, showing the version of React and Vite we're going to use, and then Tailwind, which can help us with our styles. We're using the ShadCN Tailwind library. So this already has pre-built components with styles being applied to it. It defined our data model, so the properties that are needed for a workout entry, and also the seed data as well for different exercises for this workout tracker. So this is just to demonstrate what Claude Code can generate for you. So first we start by generating a plan, and then we can go ahead and implement that plan. Now you don't absolutely always have to do a plan. If you're doing something very simple, you can just give a really direct prompt. However, if you're doing something that's quite large and you don't have all the details figured out yet, then Claude Code acts as a great thinking partner to help you fill in that details. So here we see we're initializing state from local storage if present, and then the UI components that it's going to create for us, which include a workout table, add workout dialog, and updates to the app component. So now we'll accept those. So then it'll ask if we want to proceed with implementing this. We'll say yes. Now in general, this type of development I like to call spec-driven development because we utilize plan mode and we can create a markdown file to create the specification of the feature that we need to implement. And it will be done using a markdown file, but we're able to read this without having to look into the details of the code. Now, this doesn't mean to say that the actual code implementation details aren't important, because they are, but when so much code is being generated, it's hard to digest and really understand all of it in a quick glance. And so by reading this markdown file, it gives a good understanding and provides a context so that we're able to better understand the code that it's generating. Now, throughout the project, we'll see a more refined approach in a way that is more repeatable. But I just want to give you an understanding of how you would utilize Claude Code in plan mode and then accepting edits. So see, now it's installed the npx shadcn library. So Claude Code, it doesn't just write the code for you, but can install different npm libraries. So one thing really useful when you actually are implementing the plan is it will show you each change that Claude Code made, and you can refer to the code that has been implemented, and then you can accept it or modify it. So here we see you can go up and down. So currently we can say yes if we want to make the edit, yes, allow all edits during the session, or no. You could also expand on one of these. So if you have one of them selected, you can press on tab and you can add more details. Now, since we're just doing this tutorial, I'll accept all edits and we can just review all the code at the end of the session. But ideally, if you were doing this yourself, you want to view each change and review each individually, because it allows you to better digest all the code that is being written. But for now, we'll just allow all edits. Another important thing to know is that Claude Code is non-deterministic, meaning that if I give it an input, and if you were to do the exact same input, we can't guarantee that it will have the exact same output. So one thing I'll be doing in this project, rather than simply giving you the exact prompts that I'll use, I'll be giving you the exact markdown files that I use. So to give you kind of a preview of what we'll be doing, we'll be setting it in plan mode and allow Claude Code to be our thinking partner to help fill in different gaps of how to implement things. After that, we will utilize that plan and store it in a markdown file, and then we will implement and test based on that markdown file. So in general, what I'm currently implementing can be considered to be vibe coding. Now, although I'm doing this just for this example, this isn't the exact process that we'll be using when we actually go and build our own mobile application. This is more as a sample throwaway project. Now, one potential criticism of this particular large plan is that a lot of code is being implemented without us having necessarily an in-depth view for each of it. In general, you want to move step by step, meaning that you want to be really specific of what you're trying to implement rather than trying to implement the entire system as a whole. And that's the process we'll be following when we actually go ahead and implement the features of our flow state mobile app. So here we see Claude went ahead and implemented all this for us and also ran the development server. So that took about 10 minutes to complete. So it did take a bit of time, so I will have fast forward that so you don't have to sit and wait through all that. If we can see what files it created. So before we actually dig into the files, let's just view what it created for us. So I'll copy this, a local host. So let's see if I search that, see what we get. So here we see a sample workout logger. Let's see here. So here it shows a table, so it shows the date, the exercise, the sets, the reps, the weight, and a delete icon. And we could also click to log an exercise. And it shows this dialog here. So I was able to create that in just 10 minutes with only us entering a really simple prompt. Which kind of shows the power of Claude Code. And we can actually, I'll exit out of here or close out the browser. See if we can view in our source directory, our app JSON. So here we see, for example, I was able to implement the storage key for our local storage and then parse it to get the workout entries, because we currently don't have a backend database. This is a simple throwaway project. Here it has the workout entries in the state. So we're able to add to it, delete it, and this shows how we're utilizing Tailwind in order to display and render that. So I'm just looking at the app component, but this just shows the power and the productivity boost that you can get utilizing Claude Code.